Watching Addis News Hour, commencing with the headlines. The recent peace committee to find remedies to the conflict in the northern parts of Ethiopia. France keen to bolster long-standing ties with Ethiopia. Once again, hello and welcome. You're watching Addis News Hour. I'm Zoater Desalegn. Thank you for joining us. Do stay tuned. The Peace Alternative Committee, recently formed by the government to find remedies to the conflict in the northern part of Ethiopia through peaceful talks, announced that it has started operations. Ethiopia founded the Peace Committee, putting Deputy Prime Minister Demeqe Mekonnen at its helm. In his early morning post on Twitter, member of the Peace Committee, Ambassador Redwan Hussein, disclosed that the committee has held its first meeting. Ambassador Redwan added that the committee has set directions on how to conduct the peace talks within the framework of the African Union. Accordingly, subcommittees have been formed and responsibilities have been divided. House Speaker says the government will press ahead with the legal reforms underway, adding support towards building the capacity of democratic institutions will be bolstered. The Speaker, Taggese Caffo, made the remark during a consultation forum on the reforms being undertaken in and around democratic institutions. Johannes van Town has the details. Take a look.
Ethiopia has been embarking on democratic reforms for the past couple of years. Consultations were held on the reforms undertaken by democratic institutions and the challenges they face. Speaking on the occasion, House Speaker Taggese Caffo pointed out that bolstering democratic institutions is a key step to ensure good governance in the country.
Let's focus on building institutions. Only by building an institution can a nation move forward. Therefore, it's important to start with the legislature and reinforce the legislative as well as the executive branch and make them accountable whenever there is a breach. This capacity building initiative is now able and must be replicated.
Democratic institutions beginning from the parliament must be enhanced, he said, adding, and ensuring that the institutions have solid foundations is a priority. Chair of the Public Expenditure Management and Regulatory Affairs Standing Committee with the Parliament, Christian Tadele, underlined that lack of transparency and fairness in the media needs to be addressed as an institution of democracy.
What has been done to ensure that the Parliament, which should oversee the executive, has actually delivered its duty? Do we have mechanisms whereby the Parliament itself is held accountable when it fails to meet the expectations of the general public?
Attending the forum, various heads of institutions and media professionals expressed the need to make improvements by consolidating good experiences.
State Minister for the Foreign Affairs Burtukan Ayano met and conferred with Israeli Ambassador to Ethiopia Adleling Admasu. Recalling the long-standing people-to-people ties between the two countries, Ambassador Burtukan highlighted the importance of scaling up the relationships with various engagements. Ambassador Admasu, on his part, stressed the opportunities that the close historical ties between the peoples of Ethiopia and Israel would help to enhance diplomatic relations between the two countries to a new level. The two also deliberated on ways of delivering efficient diplomatic and consular services according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Eastern African Standby Force called upon its member states to change the narration of depicting the youth as catalyst of conflict and instability in the Horn of Africa. Talking to ETV English, head of the Peace Operations Department in the Eastern African Standby Force, Kabisa Domitien, said his department is alertly working along with states to restore sustainable peace in the region. Haptam Mashagri has compiled the following story.
Recently, peace and security in the Horn of African region has been marred by conflict, insecurity, displacement, and political turmoil. Cognizant of this development, 10 member states of the Eastern African Standby Force met and discussed ways of adopting an action plan that helps to restore sustainable peace in the Horn.
Seminar, Youth for Peace.
Talking to TV English, head of the Peace Operation Department with the Eastern African Standby Force, Kabisa Domitien, said the East African Standby Force member states have set their priorities and are devoting time and energy toward restoring peace in the Horn.
To sensitize the member states of Eastern Africa Standby Force, which are 10, namely Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Sudan, Somalia, Djibouti, Comoros, and Seychelles. We are sensitizing them on the continental framework for youth for peace. The second one is to engage the youth in peace and security. And the last but not the least is to engage the member states to develop the national action plan related to youth and peace.
The Eastern African Standby Force also called on its member states to work together towards doing away with negative thoughts regarding the youth in the Horn region.
The role of member states, particularly in youth for peace and security, first of all, what you know, and it is known in many areas, the member states or some states, they have a bad image of youth in terms in contributing to peace. We want to change that bad image in a good image, whereby the youth are the agent for contributing to peace, but not the agent of making conflicts.
Over 70% of Ethiopian population is constituted by the youth.
The Ministry of Agriculture of Ethiopia and the Ministry of Agriculture of Djibouti has signed a memorandum of understanding to operationalize the Dorale multi-purpose port. Ethiopia's Minister of Agriculture, Omar Hussein, tweeted, "The port serves as resting terminal for export animals originating from Ethiopia." The agreement will pave the way for Ethiopia as a leading country in livestock population to effectively use its resources by exporting live animals through proper quarantine and inspection services. The French ambassador to Ethiopia, Ambassador Remy Marichal, said France is always ready to bolster age-long ties with Ethiopia. Talking to ETV English, the ambassador appreciates the Ethiopian government efforts to the peace talks with the TPLF, the Green Legacy Initiative, and the Inclusive National Dialogue Agenda. Kasaun Chani reports. Take a look.
Mr. Ambassador, of all the first, thank you for your golden time.
No, thank you for coming.
Moving directly to my first question. Ethiopia's own green campaign means it raises land degradation and earth motto coined in such a way to encourage citizens to leave their fingerprints. Is there any preparation on your part to organize tree planting sessions?
So yes, there is. This initiative of tree planting is very important for the reason you mentioned, to fight land erosion. it's also important to fight climate change. So that's if the habit is taken by all Ethiopians to plant trees at the beginning of rainy season, it's a good habit, and we will soon start the planting of 3,000 trees.
Ethiopia has been making a call to the international community to extend its helping hand to the internally displaced people in Amhara, Afar, and Tigray region states. What is the French government doing as a member of the international community?
In the past 2 years, we have multiplied by 10 our humanitarian assistance. We didn't used to be a humanitarian actor in Ethiopia. We have other fields of priority, but considering the scope of the crisis, we have decided to do much more. And as I speak, we do, since the beginning of the year, we provided more than 18 million euro of assistance, specifically to the 3 regions affected by the war, but also to the Somali region because of the drought. So we're doing this in close partnership with ICRC, with WFP, but also more directly with French NGOs.
What about the bilateral ties between Ethiopia and France?
This year, it happens that we celebrate 125 years of diplomatic relation, which is for us a unique situation in Africa. We have no oldest partner in Africa than Ethiopia. So this embassy, this campus has more than 120 years of existence. So our cooperation with Ethiopia touches almost all the field of bilateral relation with priorities which are set by the Ethiopian partner. So that's why we're very much present, and maybe more than elsewhere in Africa, on culture and education. So you know the Ethio-French Lycée Gebre Mariam, which was created in Addis in 1947, which has produced more than 5,000 Ethiopian alumni. So that's one example, but we're also active in the field of higher education. We have a partnership with 11 Ethiopian universities. We offer every year 60 scholarships for Ethiopian students to go and study in France. But we have also 2 major projects in the field of heritage. So you know that at the request of the Ethiopian government, we have initiated a project for the Lalibela churches, so to preserve and restore the churches, but we are also active in another major project, which is the transformation of the National Palace into a museum. So we can come back on this. But we are also partners in the field of development. So the French Development Agency has here in the country a portfolio of projects of more than 460 million euro. We're active in 10 regions, and we're focusing on support to the economic reform agenda, water sanitation, energy, and urban development. But we're also a trade partner. We have 50 companies present in Ethiopia, and those companies are more focused on producing in Ethiopia rather than selling to Ethiopia or importing from France.
Moving on, Ethiopia has expressed readiness to conduct peace talks with the TPLF in the hopes of ending war in the northern Ethiopia. What is your government's view?
My government had the opportunity to express publicly its support, its full support to this move. At the beginning of the war, we had exchange with our Ethiopian counterpart. My president spoke with the prime minister, and we shared the view that as the war started, it could only have one loser, that is Ethiopia itself. And that this confrontation couldn't have a military solution, that only a political solution could bring a lasting peace. That's why we salute the decision, the choice made by the government to engage into a peaceful and political solution.
In the meantime, would you please expound that how already the French government will support Ethiopia's plan for an inclusive national dialogue?
The priorities of our action in Ethiopia are decided jointly with the Ethiopian government. This is the example I gave about the Lalibela churches or the National Palace. These are priorities set by the Ethiopian government. In the case of this dialogue is purely Ethiopian, mobilizing Ethiopian on all sides, and I'm glad that you mentioned the inclusivity of the dialogue, which is a key condition. Now we stand ready to step in on whatever aspect of the dialogue the government of Ethiopia might decide useful.
Ethiopia and Japan have signed a food aid grant agreement worth approximately $3.5 million. Minister of Finance Ahmed Shide and Japanese ambassador to Ethiopia Ito Takako signed the exchange of notes for the food assistance program. Some 2,250 tons of Japanese rice will be provided to Ethiopia through this grant aid in order to combat food insecurity in the country brought on by various factors including droughts, conflict in the north, and a growing number of internally displaced persons. The government of Japan has been actively supporting development in Ethiopia and contributing to the improvement of people's lives through various schemes, particularly in the fields of infrastructure, agriculture, industry, education, and health. The Ministry of Transport and Logistics say it has been working to reduce high fuel costs and air pollution by using electric vehicles. A national electric vehicles promotion program has been held the previous day in Addis Ababa. Gosh Meliso tells us more.
Ethiopia imports fuel from Arabic nations at an excessive cost. The government's decision to cut back on fuel subsidy and current price adjustment of fuel is impacting the transportation service across the country. When faced with rising cost of fuel, countries look into other alternatives. Ethiopia is no exception. A national electric vehicle promotion program has been held Wednesday in Addis Ababa. Minister of Transport and Logistics Dagmawit Moges said her ministry is working to reduce high fuel cost and air pollution by promoting the use of electric vehicles.
ሀገራችን ያለባትን የነዳጅ ጥገኝነት ለመቅረፍ በተፈጥሮ የታደለችውን በተለይም የውሃ፣ የፀሐይ፣ የንፋስ እና የጂኦተርማል ኃይል ምንጭን እያደገ ከመጣው የኤሌክትሪክ ተሽከርካሪዎች ቴክኖሎጂ ጋር በማቀናጀት የሀገራችንን የነዳጅ ጥገኝነትና ለዚሁ ተግባር ሊወጣ የሚችለውን ውስን የውጭ ምንዛሪ ሀብታችንን ሁላችንም እንደምናውቀው በየዓመቱ በአማካይ እስከ $4 ቢሊዮን ለነዳጅ ፍጆታ እናውላለን። ይሄንን ለማዳን ብቸኛ የመውጫ መንገዳችን የኤሌክትሪክ ተሽከርካሪዎችን በማስፋፋት እና ጥቅም ላይ መዋል ነው ብለን እናምናለን። ይህንንም ለማሳካት ሚኒስቴር መስሪያ ቤታችን ለኤሌክትሪክ ተሽከርካሪዎች ልዩ ትኩረት በመስጠት ሰፋፊ ስራዎችን በማከናወን ላይ ይገኛል።
According to Dagmawit, the ministry has set plans to deploy over 4,000 electric buses and 100,000 electric automobiles as part of its 10-year master plan.
በ10 ዓመት መሪ ልማት እቅዳችን ደግሞ 4800 የኤሌክትሪክ አውቶቡሶችን 148,000 የኤሌክትሪክ አውቶሞቢሎችን ጥቅም ላይ በመዋል የዘርፋችንን የኃይል ምንጭ ከበካይ የኃይል ምንጭ ከሚጠቀሙ ወደ ታዳሽ የኤሌክትሪክ ኃይል ተጠቃሚነት የማሸጋገር ከፍተኛ ዓላማን ሰንቀናል። የተቆጠረ ግብ አስቀምጠናል።
It is to be recalled that Ethiopia inaugurated the first locally assembled electric car and charging plant in July 2020.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Addis News Hour with the headline.
The first ever General Assembly of the Prosperity Party has been going on over the past 3 days.
Thank you for joining me here at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa.
Ethiopian traditional costumes are exotic and represents rich history and culture.
KTV English will bring you fresh stories on the diplomatic arena. Stay tuned.
Aid agencies are warning that humanitarian funding cuts to South Sudan will negatively affect millions of people in the country. The United Nations' latest security assessment indicates that of the total 13 million populations, some 7.74 million people will face severe acute hunger between June and August this year. Let's take a look at the CGTN's report.
Nyalam Utief is a 45-year-old single mother of 4. Nyalam has been working in this warehouse for more than 10 years. She says 3 years ago her salary could cater for her children's school fees and food. Now the price of food has risen and is affecting her.
It's God helping us. With what I get from my work each day, I can only afford 1 meal a day. I have no one to turn to. I cannot ever talk to the government. The government doesn't help.
After years of violence, relative peace returned to the country in 2018 with a peace agreement, but flooding for 3 consecutive years followed, washing away crops and killing livestock. Many of those who are unable to feed themselves will have to depend on food aid from agencies such as the United Nations World Food Programme or WFP. However, WFP says a cut in funding will leave vulnerable people to revert to survival strategies such as skipping or reducing meals, which will negatively affect children. The United Nations Children Agency or UNICEF says the cut in aid will lead to 1.4 million children becoming acutely malnourished in South Sudan. The aid cut to South Sudan has been blamed on humanitarian agencies redirecting funds to Ukraine. South Sudan's government says the situation is already worsening.
Right now, as we speak, Ministry of Health and partners are responding to a number of public health events. Besides COVID-19, we have upsurge of malaria, we have cholera in 2 counties, we have anthrax, and we are also doing surveillance of all the diseases in the list to be put under surveillance.
Nyalam Utief says her next option is to sell off some of the few assets she has in order to afford food for herself and her children. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Rank, South Sudan.
You're watching Addis News Hour, and now let's take a recap of the top stories once again. The recent peace committee to find remedies to the conflict in the northern parts of Ethiopia. And France keen to bolster long-standing ties with Ethiopia. Thank you all for watching Addis News Hour. I'm Zulot Bisali, and have a great day ahead.